Hello again, everybody. This is John and Glenn with BestPriceNutrition.com. Today we're going to cover Isopure from Nature's Best. There's a few different varieties of it. They have a protein powder, meal replacement powder, and a weight gainer. We're just going to cover, specifically what they are, when to take them, and we'll go a little bit into the protein type. So, Glenn, right away off the bat, explain what it means when we're referring to protein powder. What are we talking about, as opposed to meal replacement weight gainer? Because they all have protein. But in the industry, they're referred to as protein powders as opposed to the others.
Yeah, most protein powders are going to contain a higher percentage of protein than any other macronutrient. So take, for instance, their basic protein. You've got 50 grams of protein, no carbs, 1 gram of fat. This is what you would consider your protein supplement or protein powder. When you get into meal replacement powders, they add in a lot of carbohydrates to it. Same thing with weight gainers, they increase the carbohydrate count even further. So when we're talking about protein powders, we're talking about something that has a very high concentration of protein and minimal fats, minimal carbs.
Okay. Now, specifically, there's always been some confusion with Isopure. There's the zero carb Isopure. But then people say, well, how come there's no zero carb chocolate? It's called low carb chocolate.
Yeah, and that's because they have to put cocoa powder in the chocolate, and that adds a little bit of carbs to it. So there is the difference. You'll see on the labels, this just says low carb, and then the bananas or every other flavor is going to say zero carbs.
Yeah, and the amount of carbs is minuscule. It's very low. So if some people are out looking for a zero carb chocolate, that's really all it is. Just whatever the flavoring is they use, as Glenn said, it's probably the cocoa or something, has a little bit of carbs in there too. So we're talking, 50 grams of protein to 3 grams of carbohydrates. So the protein to carbohydrate ratio is very, very high, I guess you'd say.
Small amount of carbs.
Yeah, so that's something to consider. And let's go now to the meal replacement powder, where we're looking at a 2-to-1 ratio of protein to carbohydrates. Yeah, I'm moving this back.
Okay,
so
sorry. Yeah, this is the meal replacement powder. Sort of how you can tell the difference is they put it on a white bucket, just a label on it. This is their whey. This would be the meal replacement powder. What they did with this is they've added 25 grams of carbohydrates to it. The source of carbs is maltodextrin. And actually, this is 3 scoops is 50 grams of protein and 25 grams of carbs, and where the
protein powder is going to be
protein powder is 2 scoops. So they're adding that extra scoop, and that's to get those carbs in there.
Yeah, and that's where that extra powder is going to come from, is the carbohydrates.
Yes.
And maltodextrin it's a high glycemic index carb. It's a polysaccharide basically. It can be anywhere from, they call it dextrins, anywhere from 2 to 20 carbohydrates bound together. The body just, for whatever reason, breaks it down very, very quickly, so you get a high glycemic index carbohydrate. Now the protein will slow down the absorption of those carbs a little bit, but that's a pretty high glycemic index carb. So people who are probably looking to get the carbs, maybe would want to be putting on a little bit of weight, would probably look to something like the meal replacement. Otherwise, we'd recommend probably just going with the protein powder and eating some almonds or walnuts or a piece of fruit or something like that for your carbohydrates would probably be a better source.
Yeah, and this is something that, even though it has all those carbs, it may not be very filling because of the high glycemic carbs. So yeah, like John had said, maybe somebody looking to put on a little bit of weight. And
any of the Isopures, specifically the meal replacement and the powder, they're going to be very liquidy in consistency when you mix them, and as most whey proteins are. Typically the ones that are a little more thicker and filling tend to have some fats added to them. Not always the best source of fats, I'll add, but other ones will also have some casein in there, which tends to make it a little more shake-like and more filling, like Glenn referenced. Real quick, we did skip by the natural. There's a natural Isopure that's out that has no artificial sweetener, and they use like cane sugar and Lohan, which is just like a really sweet fruit in there. So that's the difference. It's just the sweetener. It's not sweetened with anything artificial. Whereas the other ones are typically sweetened with Ace K and sucralose. So that's just for those of you who are looking to avoid that. You're going to get a little bit of carbohydrates, about 6 grams of carbs to 50 grams of protein, so still pretty low in carbohydrates. And the taste is probably going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be quite as sweet. I haven't had that one specifically, but any natural powders, if you taste it with stevia, Lohan, or just some that have a little bit of sugar, they're just not going to be quite as sweet as the ones that are artificially sweetened. So
a little bit different, yeah, because the artificial sweeteners tend to be a little sweeter.
Yeah. And some people prefer that, so that's a preference thing. We're not here to tell you what to like. That's definitely subjective. And then next is the weight gainer, and then we're going to get into the actual protein that's in each of these, because the protein source is the same. It's common to all of them.
Yeah, they call it the Isopure Mass. This they're recommending 6 scoops at a time. You got 600 calories, 86 grams of carbohydrates, all from maltodextrin, and 53 grams of carbs. So this is what would be considered a weight gainer. Higher carbohydrate count, again, like Johnny said with the maltodextrin, a higher glycemic carb. And there's a little bit of fat. There's 5 grams of fat that's inside here. They add some sunflower oil, which may be for some flavoring. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you're looking at probably getting a little more calories in there too from the fat. How many grams of fat were there?
5.
5. So yeah, so that's just going to add calories. 9 calories per gram of fat. So the weight gainer is like the meal replacement, except it's flipped a little bit. It's not quite 2 to 1 carbs to protein. It's more like 1.5 to 1. About that, give or take. It's a little bit higher than that, but that's about what you're looking at. So it's the carb to protein ratio is a little more slanted towards carbohydrates, which is why you're going to get that different ratio. So those are the different species, if you will, of Isopure. Now we're going to go into the protein. Now all Isopures, as long as it's ever been around, whether you're talking about the ready to drinks or the powders, and we're not covering the ready to drinks today, but they're all whey protein, and they're all whey protein isolates. And
yes.
Whey protein is basically it's a mixture of a bunch of globular, which basically means soluble proteins that come together to make whey what it is. And there's some major proteins that are subfractions or bioactive fractions, or they're referred to a few different ways, that actually make whey protein what it is. On the side of Isopure, they actually break down and tell you, the beta lactoglobulin, alpha lactalbumin, immunoglobulin, and there's a few others that are listed there, and they kind of give you a percent. Well, when we're talking about an ion exchange, and these all used to be 100% ion exchange.
Yeah, it looks like they've changed.
They've changed. It's actually ion exchange and microfiltered whey protein isolate. So real quick, Glenn, explain what microfiltered whey protein isolate is.
Yeah, it's just they take the whey protein or the whey that still has the lactose and fat, and they run it through a series of filters. It's a cold process, and through these filters, they're actually filtering out the whey and the lactose and fat from the whey, so that you're left with a pure whey protein.
Yeah, you're going to get a better source, like Glenn said, a higher percent protein than you would from a concentrate. Now, the thing that you want to make sure when you're processing a whey protein or when you're isolating it is to, like Glenn said, do it at a low temperature, watch the pH, because whey protein does have some immune system benefits. It can donate cysteine for your body to produce glutathione. Glutathione is a really, really potent antioxidant that your body makes. That actually, there's some studies, if you go and look, there's some peer-reviewed research that whey has some anti-cancer properties, things like that. And that's not hyperbole. There are actual some facts to show that. Glutathione is a tripeptide that you really, really want to have a high level of. So if you can get cysteine from your whey, that's a really good thing, and it's got some unique bonding. We're not going to get into that. But point being is that if you process whey properly and don't denature it, you're not going to ruin these protein subfractions. So that's sometimes where you'll hear people, we've talked about it with hydrolyzed whey proteins, kind of what makes whey great can get ruined when you hydrolyze it. I mean, in fact, it does.
Yeah, so there's the muscle building part of whey, and then there's also the immune enhancing. And I think oftentimes people who work out tend to forget that you have to be healthy to be able to work out, to grow, and things like that. So with all of those fractions inside of whey, it's nice to keep them there. Yeah,
and whey, like we said, is very rich in BCAA, so that's where the muscle building comes into play. You'll have the mTOR pathway gets activated. Well, that's because of the leucine. That's what's going to do that. Basically, the insulin turns that on and stops you from wasting muscle. But ion exchange is going to yield the highest percentage protein, okay? Because that lactose fat gets yielded. Basically, they take a whey concentrate and they do ion exchange, which is basically exploiting charges to separate out the lactose and fat. Problem is a lot of these protein microfractions and subfractions, they get denatured, and it kind of ruins the character of it. Whereas with microfiltering, cross-flow microfiltration, that's less of a concern because it's a more delicate process. It's done through fine filters. It's done at a lower temperature. So although the protein percent is a little bit lower, the actual quality of the whey that you end up with is a little bit better from microfiltering or cross-flow microfiltration. There's a few different adjectives out there, but they're all very similar processes. Whereas ion exchange tends to not be the most delicate process. So our guess is that's maybe why Nature's Best switched from being 100% ion exchange to having some microfilter in there, which is a positive thing. I know that's
Yeah, definitely, to get the immune system enhancing benefits of the whey.
Yeah, which we, oftentimes, we've failed in the past to mention, they get overlooked a lot because we're always talking about athletes and muscle building, but, being healthy is there's no break in the chain between being healthy and being able to build muscle. The healthier you are, the more muscle, the more resources your body will allocate to building muscle, so that's actually a good thing. So Isopure being a mix, ion exchange is the first on the label, so we assume this is still primarily ion exchange. People that are going to be okay with an ion exchange are going to be people with, lactose intolerance, or any whey protein isolate for that matter.
Yeah.
Typically are going to do fine. Other food-sensitive individuals, as long as they don't have some kind of an allergy to the protein itself, but most milk allergies are due to casein or lactose.
Yes.
If you take out the lactose, you're probably
And they did remove it, so there shouldn't be any problems with that.
Yeah, so in fact, a lot of the ads you'll see for Nature's Best are, somebody going to pass like on a toilet, and the idea then you wouldn't have that issue. So when to take these specific ones, I think we covered the protein pretty good as far as what whey is. Like we said, it can stimulate the immune system, increase glutathione levels. Like we said, microfiltered, cross-film microfiltration is superior to ion exchange, even though you end up with a little bit lower percent protein. It is superior. This is a blend. When to use the protein powder, when to use the MRP, when to use the weight gainer. I think it's all goal related, Let's kind of
I would say that in terms of the protein powder, being that it is a whey protein isolate, it can be used as a daily source of protein. Would also be good to use as a post-workout because it's faster absorbing because it's lacking that lactose and fat. Whey in general is pretty fast or pretty rapid absorbing. And then you're going to get into, and that would cover those, and then you're going to get into the meal replacement. If you're using it as a true meal replacement, you could take it probably in place of maybe breakfast or lunch. I'd say if you're taking it maybe in between meals, something like that, if you're looking to increase your calorie intake, or possibly post-workout.
The mass might be a little better.
The mass might be because of the higher carbohydrates.
Yeah. And do go with a smaller serving, and the serving size will be dictated by how much protein you're already taking in from food. Because remember, supplements are to supplement the diet. By no means should this replace all the protein in your diet. It's just to get you to that 0.75 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal body weight per day is what we recommend. And sometimes it's hard to do with whole food alone, so if you can get some protein shakes in, that's definitely going to help.
Yeah, and then you've got the mass, which is here. The mass is just that. It's a weight gainer. Now, the important thing about weight gainers is that you don't want to take it in place of other food you're eating or other meals.
Yeah, replacing it.
Yeah, your goal is to increase your calorie intake, to increase your body weight. So you want to take it in addition to everything else you're taking. A popular time with weight gainers is like right before you go to bed, because it's not going to fill you up for your next meal because you're going to be sleeping for those hours. Or anytime throughout the day.
Well, like you said, it's not. Sometimes we'll get people that took a weight gainer and gained weight, but really what they did was they replaced calories they were already eating, and if they weren't gaining weight that way, all you've kind of switched one for the other. You want to add this in addition to the calories that you already have in your diet. You have to eat more than you burn to gain weight. That's just the reality, and these help add to that side of the equation so that you can gain weight. So that's when to take them. So I think we pretty much covered everything, all the questions at least that we've got on these.
Just as an aside that I've noticed when looking at these, each one of them has their own little vitamin and mineral blend containing what looks like 50% of the recommended daily allowance of different vitamins and things like that. It's nice to have that in here. Definitely not something you can replace a multivitamin or something like that because of these are all isolated vitamins and minerals and things like that. It's only 50% of the daily value. I've had questions from people saying, if I take this, do I have to take a multi? I'd still recommend taking a multivitamin in addition to this.
Yeah, unless you're somebody who's eating an impeccable diet with a lot of fruits and greens, you could probably get by. And sometimes finding specific vitamins that you'd want to take. We have other vitamin videos where we talk about isolated vitamins versus whole food and stuff like that, so we can cover those there. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them. We're happy to answer them on the vitamins or on the protein. So I think we pretty much covered all your questions on that. Feel free to post comments. We're more than happy to answer them. Also, if you liked the video or you didn't like it, you can rate it right at the bottom. There's a thumbs up, thumbs down. You could check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/BestPriceNutrition. And again, post those comments. We're happy to answer back. Thank you.
Thank you.